Hi everybody, I'm Amy, this is my wife Maggie, and together we are ThinkerThemer, and today we're excited to be previewing for you the new board game by first-time designer Chris Matthew, An Age Contrived, and his publishing company, Bellows Intent.
So in An Age Contrived, we are playing as different gods, vying for the belief of mortals. And the way we're going to gain that belief is by using our energy to help them build these monuments and also develop their civilization. Ultimately, whichever god manages to do that the most effective way will be the one most remembered and also the winner of the game.
Now, as usual, I'll give you a brief overview of the way the game works, but please remember that everything you see here is prototype form and is subject to change, and also we have a pretty luxe premium deluxe edition of this game.
It's an excellent prototype level.
Yeah, there are some things here that may not be in the regular retail version, but check out the campaign page for more information on that. Now, the main thing that people are going to be talking about in this game are these cool player boards, which are your transmuter boards, where you are going to be essentially programming them to take actions in the future. Now, that's a bit complicated, but think about it like this. Your transmuter board, and in this case, we have these fancy metal contraptions that won't be the same in all editions of the game, but basically it consists of these transmuter tiles that are in this conveyor belt-like contraption, and you are going to be moving them from left to right. And on these tiles there are two sections, the upper and the lower. The lower energy tokens are going to allow you to, if you remove them, activate the action available to you at the bottom of your board. These actions are all consistent across players at the start of the game, but may be upgraded at your choosing along the course of the game. A lot of these actions allow you to deploy the top layer of energy tokens out onto the board to get things done. And if you've got one of these cool little contraptions, if you choose this third action, so imagine I remove this to activate this action, I then get to choose one of these two columns to take the top layer and put it out onto the board. If I decide to choose this one, I will pull back this and pop out that token in order to use it on the board. The tricky element about the programming in the game is that you have a choice on your turn as to whether you want to activate as many of those actions as you want, or you can take a blank transmuter tile, place it in the left-hand side of your conveyor belt, pop out an empty one to use later in the game, but then you get to load up this with the energy tokens of your choice. And what are you trying to do in this game? Well, you're trying to help the people build these monuments, and these monuments come flat packed from IKEA and placed onto the board at the start of the game. So you'll see that this is a ship, but it's many layers or pieces of the ship that we are going to be contributing our energy tokens to in order to get them built. Now, what's interesting about this game is if you are the last person to contribute to a piece of the monument, you're the one that gets to build it, but everybody else gets to benefit from it by taking a bonus action and the retrieve action of the tiles that they had placed on there. But in order to recognize your dedication to being the person that completed that piece, when you construct this on the board against the little metal markers, you then get to place your energy token or one of your energy tokens into that monument area, which means it's now bound to the board and lost forever. But don't worry, it's going to make you victory points at the end of the game. But as you can see, you'll start to lose your energy tokens throughout the board, which means you have to unlock new ones along the way, which are along the side and not accessible to you at the start of the game. Energy tokens are also used in a range of other ways. So let's pretend that I've got this energy token.
Fling it out.
Now, it can be used in a number of ways across the game, but essentially, just to break it down for you, there is a market or a shopping area where you can put tokens in there to spend to buy new pieces of transmuted tiles that are going to have more powerful or more spaces, essentially, of things that you're able to deploy. So for this one, when you activate this tile, you're going to be able to deploy 2 tiles instead of 1, which is really really powerful. The other thing you can do with this transmuter token is you can place it in one of these end game bonus areas, as long as you've met the condition, some of which are randomized for each game. And the final thing you can do is not just bind them to monuments, but also bind them to these pillars, which are located around the board. And that is one part of why you need to move your avatar around this board or your player piece. It's to get to other areas, to bind your energy to those areas in different ways, as well as the second reason you need to move, which is to build these links or bridges between the zones. That means that you now don't need to move so much around the board to have access to other areas, but they're going to provide you with bonuses when you cross over them. And if that's not enough, when you move those bridges off your board, you're unlocking asymmetric player abilities. So there's a lot to think about here. I've summarized this in a fairly brief way, but now let's talk about how we felt when we were playing it.
So when you first see this game, it hits you with a lot of thematic terminology and lore, which I enjoyed the lore, but the thematic terminology can get in the way in terms of the learning and getting it to the table, which is now, I believe, has been streamlined, which is good to hear. Now, one of the key things with this is, even though you kind of see it's a sort of fantasy world, which you're often not all that into, it actually really is a Euro in disguise.
Yeah.
So there's actually there's no luck, really.
No luck involved, it's perfect information.
Yep.
And even though there's asymmetric powers, they're not available to you at the beginning of the game. So you're all kind of starting from an even playing field.
Yeah.
And this game is like equal parts, I think, planning and opportunistic.
Yeah.
Because the programming element means that you're forced to plan ahead. You're thinking, well, what type of energy token do I put in here to finish off that monument over there? But then it might be the case that someone else finishes that monument before it comes back to your turn. So now you've got to quickly rethink, how are you going to use that token, or how are you going to reshuffle the way you play out your actions to make the most of what's available to you. Likewise, when someone else finishes off a monument, if you had any pieces on there, they are going to come back to you and trigger their retrieve actions, as well as any associated benefits. So there's a reason to engage with what other people are doing, and it means that you need to think about those bonuses on the fly. So, I wasn't expecting to get that token back. Now I get to move something else up as a retrieve bonus, and that's giving me this, which means I don't need to do this now. And so you're constantly reevaluating that strategy.
One of the other interesting things about this game is that when you first start playing it, because there's quite a lot of different things going on, it's one of those games that you will, over time and over game sessions, dive more deeply into the asymmetric abilities, but probably in the earlier stages, just start to understand the flow and how different things are going to interact on the board. Like, what are the kind of things that you're going to focus on? What's going to be a good payoff for you? Even just how things kind of play out. But as you kind of become more comfortable with that, it's actually really nice to have all these different unique characters to choose from, which I actually also really like the artwork and their sort of characteristics, because then that's when you start revealing the unique powers, and that really helps you explore how different strategies can play out with each individual god.
And one of my favorite parts about the strategy is knowing and thinking about when you want to upgrade certain elements of your player board or your character in order to help you win in this game, because there's this tension of constantly wanting to contribute to the monuments, which are going to give you these great benefits, and everyone else is getting those benefits, so you want to get in on that action. But at the same time, if you slow down and maybe upgrade some elements of your actions, or you upgrade these transmuter tiles to be more powerful, then maybe that's going to help you in the long run. For one example, these are actions at the bottom of your board. They pop out, and if I was to upgrade this, I put my basic one to the side, and then I get to choose one from the available upgrades for that spot. I will be the only person that has this new upgrade as it goes into my board, and now I'm set up for the rest of the game to use a more powerful column 3 action.
And that is actually one of the things that I enjoy about this. Like, all of the elements of your transmuter board are upgradable. So it's not just the actions, but also the tiles, and then even the things, the conductor tiles at the top, which we haven't even kind of covered that. But when you upgrade them, they actually allow for the advanced action to be more powerful. So if I were to advance a tile, say for example I had gained this tile, if you advance this tile and then you match those symbols, I need to be very careful here because I'm doing it awkwardly. As you match these symbols during the advanced option, then you get to take that action 3 times in that instance, which is one of the things that allows you to bind energies to monuments. But let's move on to also the feeling when you play the game. One of the things that's really cool about this is you never really have that feeling of going, I'm stuck, or there's nothing good that I can do, or there's no action, there's no good action that I could take. There's always something that you can do. There's a lot of different ways, or if in doubt, you can always just advance and reload.
But I actually think that's interesting for a programming game, because some programming games can be quite punishing.
Yeah.
I.e., if you think about something as simple as Cult Express, sometimes when those things are revealed, you realize your action is completely useless because you hadn't thought through the puzzle enough. In this case, that can be true in that you're like, oh, I put that in the wrong place, or oh no, I can't finish that monument because someone else has finished it. But for the most part, there's always something you can do.
Yeah.
There's always some good use of these energy tokens, and that has like quite a nice, pleasant feel to it. So it means that when we started playing this game, or when a new one of our friends was introduced to this game, even though there's quite a lot of things going on and a lot of rules, it still meant that they got a good feeling of being able to contribute to the monuments without having to be a super sophisticated player.
Yeah, that's the other thing, the positive player interaction. As you're playing, none of it is really like confrontational, or I'm never destroying something that Amy's doing, or I'm never like, oh, that was a devastating blow to what I was trying to. It's like, no, all of the interaction, these are actually quite civil, very respectful gods, as they're all trying to vie for.
And you're working together in most cases, and everybody benefits.
And so you're invested. So it's like if Amy's finishing a monument and I'm there, I'm not like, oh no, she finished it. You might be, but usually it's like, well, if I'm there, great, I get to take a bonus. And if I don't get to bind my energy comes back, and all of the different energies have different abilities as they're returning or when they're being retrieved from completing a monument piece.
And now we're going to wrap up with some of the fun stuff, because if you haven't noticed already, this production is incredible.
Yeah.
And there's some really novel things here that Chris has tried to do that, I've never seen before in a board game. So we're going to talk about the things that we think are the non-negotiables, and other things that maybe they're not needed, but a little bit cool. So the first thing we want to talk about is the monument. So these monuments, flat-packed IKEA monuments, they actually, what you can't see is there's tiny little numbers on the board that show you where each of those pieces go. So as this builds up, you are going to complete these monuments. And now there is this 3D reminder of the fact that we have collectively built this great thing, and it feels so satisfying.
It's very satisfying, as they stick like that when the magnet kind of sticks
when
to
it connects. You just like, and it falls into place, and the monument is there standing by itself. Absolutely incredible.
I think as a themer, that's probably one of my favorite things, is like seeing the world come to life, which is it's just super satisfying. I'm always like, beautiful. Oh, I wish I could be the one finishing it just so that I can put the piece. Or if you're closer to it, it's like, I'll do it for you. That's fine. I got that.
And I'm sure it's not a cheap thing to produce, but I do hope to see more 3D elements in games in the future. The second element is, of course, the conveyor belt. And I'm going to talk about the conveyor belt separate to the firing action of the deluxe components, but the conveyor belt works really well. So actually this idea of programming, sliding, and then activating the action underneath, we've seen variations of that in other games, but with this contraption that's been built, of course it's going to be different in the final version, it does help with that conveyor kind of process, and it feels really satisfying when one pops out the other end. It just gives you a sense of flow, of what's going to move to there, because there's that movement associated with it. And so I really like that. But let's also talk about the most probably gimmicky part of the game.
The spring-loaded firing ability.
Which is this spring-loaded
Yeah, you do them very violently. Like, yours are very aggressive. Like, you can actually just sort of do a much... I did a too low one, which this happens sometimes.
Example.
If you do it too softly, then you have to like go in and fish them out, which kind of defeats the purpose.
Yeah.
But then the flinging can be quite
the flinging
scary.
The flinging is, and I'm no doubt this will be refined.
Yeah.
But it can
sometimes it can actually bounce off the little thing and fling all the way back into the underneath. So it's
at the moment it's a novelty that we found that our friends would use once and then just resort to picking them up out of there.
It's just quicker to just pick them up.
You know, it's kind of a personal preference thing, but it is funny and really interesting way to engage players around the table with what they're doing.
The other thing that I want to mention is the little energy token tiles that are kind of like that azul type, is it like acrylic kind of material? I really love that. It's just, they're always so satisfying to handle and like, it's just very tactile. It's like, this is my little block of energy and where am I going to put it? You know, what a delight. So that's an excellent element as well.
And finally, something else that's really unique about the campaign, you can get your box personalized. So Chris has done a lovely job of personalizing the inside of our box lid that says Amy and Maggie, ThinkerThemer, and Collector's Edition with one of the characters imprinted inside the box lid. I believe that's going to be part of the campaign.
Yeah.
Is it a necessity? No. But I have backed many things and loved the fact that my name has been super tiny inside the box lid with 2,000 other people. But in this case, it's blown up. It's a one-of-a-kind game.
Yeah.
And that makes it a little bit more special.
It makes it super special. When you have like other people around the table going, because then you usually have the box, you know, the box sort of sitting there, but it's like you actually have it the other way around. So people are like, is that your name? Like, what's it got your name on it? You're like, yeah, well, there you go. It's just because I'm special. Because I backed this.
Exactly. The smart backer of me is like, if you're someone who tends to play games and sell them on, maybe not the best idea.
Yes.
But if you are going to cherish this game and enjoy it, then it certainly is a beautiful addition. A quick note about player counts. The solo mode was not available to us for the preview, unfortunately. The two-player mode we played extensively, and some little changes have been made, so we can't fully comment on it, aside from the fact that we didn't really encounter too many problems playing it two-player. In fact, the scaling is quite good in that you include fewer monuments, which helps with the timing of the game. We played it a lot at 3, 4, and 5 players, and my personal favorite player count was probably 3 players. Because the game feels quite swift as it moves around the table.
It feels involved enough, and like there's enough monuments and things going on, but also it doesn't take on, you know, like forever.
It doesn't get too bogged down. The 5-player game was quite long, but the 3-player game, we got it down to around an hour. And so, you know, that is a really super satisfying Euro experience where you want to feel like, oh, let's just play it again and I'm going to try a different strategy and see where I end up. So to summarize, in terms of who is this game for, the first thing to say is it's not immediately accessible. It's going to be satisfying from game one, but it certainly takes quite a few games to wrap your head around everything that you're doing and how all of those things come together. So to unlock your full potential from a score perspective, you're going to have to sink some time into this game, which means that it's not super newbie friendly. No. So just something to bear in mind, that this is one that's going to, you know, reveal itself to you over time.
And also for the themers out there, I'll say this is more of a thinker's game. Like, even though there's a lot of lore as part of it, really the thing that shines the most is the mechanics and the kind of unique way that the programming and the kind of deploying things has been implemented.
Yeah, the lore is not completely tied in with the mechanics. It does take a bit of memory to just understand how the world links to the mechanics.
It's a beautiful world that's been created in the sense, like, I really love the artwork. I love the 3D components, but don't expect a deep thematic experience.
But we love what Chris has done here. It's an ambitious project with both aesthetics and mechanics coming together in a wonderful way and a wonderful game experience. So go and check that out. If you enjoyed this video, please hit like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we'll be back with more board game content soon. But otherwise, bye for now.
Bye.